All right, so here we go. We are moving into the second part of our introduction to it's basically it's a udang myeongsa, but it's mindful breathing. So this is coming from the Taoist, Tonghan Taoist clan, and this is how I was taught. And we're breaking it down into some really, really simple and effective steps. As we talk about, too often people just try to sit and forget and they fail. So we don't want to go from everything to nothing. We want to go from everything to something, to one thing to nothing. And we use these methods. In lesson 1, if you haven't seen lesson 1, go back to it. We review how to set ourselves up. Just the act of sitting properly sends a signal to your nervous system saying, hey, it's okay to rest, restore, repair, and replace. You're not running away from a lion. If your knees are wider than your shoulders, stomach 36 and Hoyin are grounded, then the body starts to literally drop into this like pyramid structure and stabilize into the earth. We talked a little bit about inner smile as well, and we talked about the 5 senses, so I would really recommend reviewing that. So now we're going to start with how do we trick the mind into paying attention. And as we talked about, there's 2 ways that you can get lost in the moment, and that's the trick. So meditation is whenever we're out of time, when we're no longer projecting into the future or remembering the past. And that's what the brain does. It's a problem-solving organ. So it's always trying to remember, and it's always trying to plan. That's how we survive the winters and everything else, just by remembering, oh, right, this is when we plant seeds. Let's plan on it getting cold this winter and all of that. So it's a good thing, but ultimately it kind of took us over and became we identify. That's what we tend to do. We start to identify. The first thing we did is identify with our thought forms. Then we started to identify with form itself. This is my car. This is my home. And then all of a sudden you're projecting your ego into your possessions, which happen to be completely unstable and impermanent, which only adds to the anxiety. Because you start to think, well, wait a second, in the future, this whole thing that I'm completely identifying with is going to fall away. And that creates this undercurrent, the whisper of death. And so, no, your eternal consciousness momentarily residing in form. If you can keep to that, as they say in the Taoist tradition, an immortal is born. You're in it, you're not of it. You're having a human experience, but you're a spiritual being having a human experience. Well, we forget that. So by sitting, meditating, creating tranquility, experiencing clarity, and seeing that constant, revisiting the nature of mind, we kind of stay grounded. Sure, we can get into life and totally be passionate about it, as we should, but we measure self-mastery by there's a bunch of ways, but the easiest way to do it is to measure self-mastery is the distance between your thoughts. How much space is there between your thoughts? Another thing we look at too is the speed in which we can go from upset to reset. Because sometimes you have to completely engage in something and completely draw into it and then let it go. And that's an important thing. Nature is very good at that. If you watch, wild animals, they get chased down by a lion and they're all running and then they're done. They finish eating, they do their thing. They don't require therapy. They don't talk about it all day. They're just done. So that's one of the key things we want to do with our meditation is constantly clean house. If you're looping a memory, oh, I've been betrayed. Oh, she never loved me. Oh, that guy screwed me in a business deal. Oh, my father wasn't there for me. And that's your dialogue. You've got yourself a problem. Information or entertainment, that's it. And if it isn't going to serve you today or tomorrow, don't waste the space. And we always say you don't die and go to hell, you bring hell with you. So we want to go through these experiences, we want to grow from these experiences, and then we want to let them go. In Oriental medicine, we talk about the metal element based on the 5 elements in Oriental medicine, which we'll go into as we go through this process in the future at greater depth. But metal in Oriental medicine is lungs, large intestine, and skin. And these are things in which we let go of waste. Yeah? cellular waste, all kinds of waste. Well, also the mental element on a shun level or a psychic level is the ability to let go of your wounding, your story. So if you have this memory and it keeps coming back to you and it's not bringing you joy and it's not providing you information, then you're kind of brick by brick building your hell. So let's not do that. So how do we basically tear down the wall, as Pink Floyd once said, is through our meditation, returning to center, returning to source, going back to where none of it really matters. And you realize, oh wow, there's a state where that doesn't matter. So how do we do it? We talk about two ways of getting there. Inspiration will take you out of time and space. If you're having a great time, you'll look and you say, uh-oh, I'm late. You're into it. You're completely into it. You're inspired. You're talking to someone you love. You're playing an instrument. Maybe you're gardening. Maybe you're doing a craft. Maybe you're listening to some beautiful music, but you're in it. And to the point where, you don't even realize someone's tapping you on the shoulder. Hey, Mike, you're just in it. Great. That is, in fact, meditation. Just now. No future, no past. That's an awesome thing. So that's why we try to find skillful means, find something you love. Find a craft, play an instrument, get involved, do art, do something. Meditation isn't always just sitting on the mat like a little monk. Meditation can happen anywhere at any time. We do the sit like a little monk on the mat because the inspiration piece belongs to happiness, which belongs to happenstance. It's not reliable. It's like trying to say, I'm going to go be funny. You probably won't at that point. It's contrived. So that kind of thing is going to happen organically, and when it happens, it's awesome. Desperation, however, is quite reliable. That is formulaic. You can easily shift yourself into a situation where you're desperately trying to survive and you desperately need to focus. You're not thinking about breakfast. You're not thinking about lunch. You're just thinking about which wire do I cut to defuse this bomb, if you will. You're there. You're in the moment. So desperation's another hack into now. And we've all had traumatic experiences where something happened, a car accident, whatever, and time will stop or slow down. The moment will collapse right there. Now, of course, we associate that with trauma. So a lot of times, we'll keep our mind moving. God forbid we go back there. So if you look at the Zen Bushido tradition, they discovered that in the battlefield, swinging these 3-foot razor blades. That's pretty traumatic. And then you come home, you totally have PTSD. So they would do the tea ceremony. They would do all of the rituals, all of these things just to keep them now. Because if I remember what the hell happened yesterday and I think about what I might have to do tomorrow, I'll have a nervous breakdown. So they learned to completely what they call chain the monkey to the tree. Just totally drop into now. That's where Iaido, the drawing and setting in the sword, even came from, is just total mind into every movement and every little nuance of every joint. So we can use that. In yoga, they have the 8 limbs of yoga, and one of them is the asana. And asana is there for many reasons. When you stand like this and you move, well, moving for one point, okay? Just twisting and moving, which I really recommend if you want to have an effective meditation practice. You really do need some type of skillful means in which you can displace the cellular memory. So we can talk about this a little bit so that we don't get lucky when we meditate. We have a plan. Every emotion you have is stored in a very specific organ. So your anxiety in the heart, a moment that gave you anxiety, guess what? It's stored there. Worry, it's stored in the spleen. Aggression in the liver. Fear in the kidneys. Grief in the lungs. And throughout the day, you're having this experience, and it's all the peptides are lodging into these cells. Yeah. Well, now you're sitting there, and guess what? It bubbles up like steam right here to the forehead screen. So these thoughts that are plaguing you, they're not coming from nowhere. They're in you, and they're going to keep coming. And they're going to keep coming up into the forehead screen, and you'll see the story, and then you'll start commenting on the story, internal dialogue. Then you'll have speech, and then you'll have actions. All this karma comes from unresolved, stored emotion. So when you do your training, yoga, tai chi, qigong, whatever, you're wringing out the dirty rag. You're displacing these emotions so they're not just coming. So there's a greater sense of calm. Also, when you're standing, and I'm sure most of you at one point found yourself in a yoga class or something where you're in this horrible position for way longer than you thought you were going to be. And now all of a sudden you're shaking, you're burning. Yes, that's trauma. You're not thinking about anything. But when is this lady going to say, go to the next posture? You're just, that's it. Nothing matters anymore because we've got your attention. They're using that as strategic trauma to, one, twist the body, get rid of the emotion, but two is burning the nervous system, burning the ability to stay focused during discomfort, which you're going to need if you really plan on cultivating and sitting long enough for this tranquility. Your body's going to, first your mind's going to go nuts, and then your body's going to revolt. Your back's going to tighten, your knees are going to want to explode, you're going to feel all this stuff. You got to clear all of that out in order to have any success sitting long enough to experience that state of no mind. So that's how you can use asana or movement for strategic trauma, right? Well, we also use what we call this udang myeongsa, or this, it's like tumo breathing. Wim Hof made it really famous too. A lot of people are doing that. And it's all great stuff, okay? And there's many ways we can use it. And yes, you can use the breathing for your temperature. I use it, we're here in Arizona, so I use it to cope with the heat, believe it or not. Guiding hikes in the mountains and stuff, it's hot. So I can regulate my temperature with that. Yes, it does work in a very practical way. We're going to use it to trick the body, to get the mind's attention. So what we start with is we sit, all right? Here's our 3 pieces, okay? This is how to sit. Now, step 1, clearing the mind through giving it a big enough problem, a problem that should be bigger than anything that's currently on your mind. We're displacing, we're tricking the mind into focusing on one thing. We're giving it a false problem. And what is that problem? Not dying. We're going to trick the mind into thinking, oh shit, I'm going to die. We're hacking the limbic system by exhaling, right, for an extended period of time and not inhaling. And then all of a sudden your mind is like, what? Wait, how about now? What do we do now? That's the trick, okay? So there's many methods. I'll show you our method, and then of course you can alter it. Now, I breathe in and out through the nose. Some people have a very hard time with that. I do recommend upgrading your breathing habit to only breathe out of the nose unless you're speaking or singing or something. Don't be this guy, mouth breather. Very bad, okay? Dehydrating the sinuses. We can go on and on. There's a book called Breath. Read it. So breathe through the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth when you inhale, drop the tongue when you exhale when we do this exercise. Why? Again, hacking the autonomic nervous system into thinking you're eating. You go like this, inhale, drop when you exhale. Well, you're going to start to salivate, but guess what? You have no food. So all of those digestive enzymes will drop. You can use those. It's really good, okay? So we're going to use this rapid breath. We're going to use this primal breath to, let's say your mind is this room filled with smoke, all of these thoughts. We're going to open the doors. We're going to blow the smoke out. So the first thing we need to do is kind of clear the mind. That's going to be the first step in our preparation for cultivation. Breath work. How do we do it? Well, I really recommend constantly being mindful of what we call the lower dantian, or the lower energy center, specifically conception vessel 4. It could be your navel, the chi high point, either way. So when we do our breath work, let's do what we call our 3 sipping method, always in prep, to open the lungs, clear the lungs, get everything ready. So the first thing I'd like you to do is, you're seated. We've already learned that in lesson 1. And let's go ahead and put our hands on our navel. And we're going to inhale all the way to our belly button. And we're actually going to feel it in the kidneys too. Then we're going to inhale to our sternum. Then we're going to inhale to our collarbones. And we're going to feel it expand like a blowfish, right? And then we're going to exhale. We're pulling in our belly. We're going to exhale again, pulling up the pelvic floor. We're going to exhale one more time, emptying the lungs. Okay? Into the navel, sternum, collarbones. Fill it up. Exhale, suck it in. Exhale, pull it up. Exhale, empty it out. Good. In, in, in. Tongue on the roof of the mouth, inner smile. Exhale, suck it in. Exhale, pull it up. Exhale, empty it out. Okay, so that's kind of getting it ready. We want to lengthen the breath to lengthen the life. We're using that full breath, okay? Now, we'll start off with 30 rapid breaths. Again, you do the best you can through the nose or the mouth. And on the last breath, we're going to exhale with no pressure and just relax for 30 seconds. Let's give it a try. Here we go. Relaxing the shoulders. Inhale. Exhale. And begin. Leave it out. Relax the neck. Inhale. 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 Out. Out. And out. Let's do another set. Inhale. 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 Relax the neck. Out. Out. And now we'll do one last set. Inhale. 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 Out. Out. And out. Okay. So that would get us in a state of clarity. All right. The next phase we'll go into is regulating the emotions. We'll do that in the next lesson. couple of tips on this. You can do 3 sets, you can do 9 sets. This is a great thing to practice also to reset your emotional state of mind, energy if you're feeling tired, or if you feel like you're getting sick. You can use this to pump up the immune system because we're basically starting to dump growth hormones and stress proteins when you do that. And of course, you can extend the breath to 40 seconds, a minute, whatever, as long as you're comfortable with it and you're not putting yourself, in harm's way. A couple of tricks that we have used for extending the breath during this primal breathing. One of them is the swallow 3 times. So you just swallow, swallow, and swallow, and it'll stop the lungs from locking. You start to feel like you're making a fist. When you swallow like that, you trick the lungs into thinking you just took a big breath, and they relax. Okay, and you're also dropping what they call the immortal's elixir, because you've been lifting the tongue, dropping the tongue, one of the peak medicines. So it's an inner alchemy technique as well. You do it well because when it'll go gloop, 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 you'll hear it after a while. The body will respond to it. Another thing we do as well for extending that breath is the red dragon swimming in the sea technique. And this is another really good one for bringing up that upper peak immortal elixir. So we want a moist, cool head. And so we're always working on making sure we're breathing in and out only through the nose, not dehydrating ourselves with an open mouth, keeping the sinuses, the throat, eustachian tubes, everything nice and cool and moist. This technique, you take the tip of your tongue and you put it right in front of your teeth on your upper gum. Then you bring it to the corner of your mouth, then the lower gum, and then the corner of the mouth. And it makes a circle like that. And then you go the other way. Looks stupid, probably don't do it on the bus. But, when you're alone, you can do it. Now you do 3 circles, 3 circles. You can do 9 circles, 9 circles. You can do 3 sets of 3 circles. It's actually a whole thing. We'll go into that in the future. But right now, just to use it to, again, give your body space, you can add a minute to your breath by just adding the swallowing 3 times and the red dragon swimming in the sea. And it'll really start to get this internal system moving. So now what we've done is we set ourselves up in the correct seated position, grounded ourselves, settled ourselves in. Then we cleared the mind with the primal breath, 3 sets, 30 breath, block for 30. And that should get you there. Now, what will happen is, if you do this a lot, 30 seconds won't get you there. You'll be like, whatever. So the more you do it, the longer it's going to take to get to your peak. It's just like holding a horse stance, At first, a minute's going to kill you. And after a while, it takes 5 minutes to feel the same, like lifting weights or something. It's the same. So start with 30. Don't put too much pressure. And now we've got that first step. Okay, so we use 3 key things we're going to do. Well, number 1, primal breath. Number 2, what we call box breathing, and we'll go through how we approach it. And then number 3, stone breathing. And once we get into those 3 steps and you drop into your stone breath, that's when you can more like formulaically drop out. You can pretty much count on being able to get out of time and space. Now, based on what's going on in your life, it might be 5 minutes of nothing. Sometimes you'll drop in and you'll look and it's like, oh my, it's been an hour and a half. That's awesome. Don't push it. Let it happen organically. Well, the beginning level of this Taoist inner alchemy is learning that they're alchemists. They're scientists. It's not random. There's an equation, there's a method, and how we're going to get here. So this is our most reliable set that we use. Even if you're not an expert, you can get in there and get a result with this 3-step approach. Primal breath, box breath, stone breathing, then drop out. And now we're ready. And from there, there's literally 108 different meditations we can do from that point forward. But right now, we have to get this foundation. So give it a time, give it some practice, and then in the lesson 3, we'll go through our box breathing methodology. Till next time, be well.